But we're also still seeing bears that are coming in with missing limbs. We know they're wild-caught bears, or snare marks around their necks. Yeah, in the back?
Were these bears, many of them, aggressive toward people?
Some of them are. When we were there, there was a bear named Plug that people just could not get near at all. He was so angry and so obviously mentally unsound. The bears that make it through this process kind of mentally intact don't tend to be aggressive. They actually, it's pretty remarkable how forgiving they seem to be. Now, of course, we don't treat them like pets. You know, they're wild animals, but they're at the point where they tolerate humans really well. They know humans are their food source in this situation, and for the most part, they're happy to see us. This bear was happy to see us. He came up for a close-up, and then his friend tried to get in on the action. He wasn't too happy about that. And this bear just decided to ignore us altogether. Alice and I were there for about 5 days, and we spent most of our time just watching bears, which was the coolest thing. We watched them climb, and we watched them play. This guy up here is looking at this guy down here, and I bet he's about to flip over and go after him for a wrestle. They do wrestle a lot. They play a lot, which is kind of amazing. In the wild, they're fairly solitary. But in a situation like this, where there is so much food, there's really no need for them to be competitive and to maintain that solitary lifestyle. And we found that they actually really like to be close to each other. Now, of course, these particular bears have been raised in such close proximity to each other on the bear farms, they're probably a little more used to it than any of the wild bears would be. But they do really well together for the most part. We spend a lot of time checking on the behaviors of each bear and the temperaments of each bear before we put them together. Trish? Yeah, there's a lot of time and effort goes into that. And in fact, the staff members that are perched up on top of those bear houses are mostly watching for any aggressive behavior and alerting, you know, the staff, the senior staff there, to when a bear needs to be moved. The bears make an interesting noise. It's kind of a popping noise, and they make it when they're frightened, but they also make it to alert other bears to the fact that they're not a threat. And so this particular wrestling match that we watched started with one of the bears walking up behind the other, popping all the way up and saying basically, I'm here, I'm okay, I just want to play, I'm not going to hurt you. And then they started this little wrestling match, which lasted a minute or so, and then they both went on their way. We saw lots of bears doing bear things, scratching and swimming. Sometimes alone, sometimes with friends. Mostly we just saw them looking stunning, like this beautiful bear. Or doing what bears really do best, just being lazy. These moon bears are not super high energy. They do like to climb, they do like to swim, but they also really like to loaf around. And we saw so many bears just taking it easy and enjoying the good life, which they so deserve after what they've been through. This is Ginny. We watched her for a while as she dug this hole and then eased back into it and then just went to sleep. They are. Some of them are tagged. Yeah, some of them are. This is BJ. He's another one of our big happy bears, looking quite comfortable on his hammock. And another bear, I'm not sure which bear this is, but just enjoying a nap in a nice sunny spot. This is our largest enclosure. It's where our bears who are kind of the most physically stable and sound and have been there for a while are living at the time. It's a wonderful enclosure. We're trying out some new materials in this enclosure that are made out of composites and synthetics so that we don't destroy all of our trees, which are at the sanctuary, because they have been ripped down and ripped to shreds by bears. So we've got these composite rocks, for instance, in this waterfall here that are pretty cool. And while we were there, a tour group of Chinese school children from the local area came to see the sanctuary. It's opened a couple days a month, and tour groups can come through and view the sanctuary. And right now there's a waiting list to get in and see it. And it's so amazing to watch these children see these bears in a semi-natural element and hopefully go home and say to mom and dad, I'm not going to use bear bile products. There's no need to. There are replacements, and this is the way the bears should be living. This is Jasper. At Animals Asia, we're not supposed to have favorites, but we all do. And Jasper's most people's favorite. He is just the most handsome, well-mannered sweetheart of a bear. He's kind of like the uncle to all the other bears. And this picture was taken right after a call went out over all the walkie-talkies through the whole sanctuary saying, Jasper's on top of the waterfall, and everybody just dropped everything. Literally, Alice and I were watching a surgery, and there were surgical staff who were like, can we go? And they left to go see Jasper on top of the waterfall. And by the time we got there, he was done with it. He was over it. He was down on the ground. But it was pretty cool to see all the commotion that this bear could cause. One of the highlights was getting a chance to feed some of the bears. And this is Christina from Germany feeding German gummy bears to our bears. And they love them. We think that Haribo should sponsor us because the bears love gummy bears so much. And this is not something that is done for tourists. This is not something that's done for fun. There's actually a reason that some of the bears are being hand-fed. And the highlight, I had to sneak that picture in because it's my favorite. The highlight of my trip was feeding Jasper. But the reason it's being done is because the bears need to have constant examinations, basically. And in the beginning, they were having to be anesthetized to do this. And a behaviorist came and worked with the staff there and said that with some of these bears, you could do some positive reinforcement training. These are not bears who are ever going to be able to be releasable. We're not worried about them getting imprinted. They already are. Let's just face it. They're going to live with humans. And if they're going to, for the rest of their lives, we should be able to take care of them without having to be invasive. And so through positive reinforcement training using a whistle and treats, some of the bears are learning to come up to the cage, open their mouths so we can check their teeth, stand up so that their abdomens can be checked, so that suture sites can be checked after surgeries, or monthly checks of their catheter wounds from the old days can be checked. And so that's what's happening here. Is Jill is working with this particular bear to get him to open his mouth and show us his teeth. Heal? What was that? Do those catheter wounds heal? They do, yeah. No, they do eventually heal over. Some of the bears wanted to have nothing to do with this. This is little Francie. She just could care less about treats or anything for that moment, and she has every right to ignore us and do whatever she wants, because Francie spent her life, over 20 years of it, in this cage. This is the tiniest cage. It is so small. It literally is, what would you say, Alice? It's about 2.5 feet tall, maybe, and 2.5 feet wide. It's so small that her growth was stunted. We call her the teddy bear because literally she's about this big. She's so tiny. She's about half the size of a moon bear. And so she lives in a special enclosure next to Jill's apartment. It's called the Secret Garden. And it's a very small enclosure where she and a few other bears, including Rupert, who has brain damage, and Snoopy, who is blind, are living together in kind of close proximity to the rest of the staff, so we can really keep a good eye on them. I mentioned that we got to see surgery. That was really cool. This bear was getting its annual health check and having an ultrasound of its abdomen to just check to make sure there's no liver damage, no liver cancer creeping up. At the same time, the vets decided to remove a tooth. It had a very, very badly broken tooth down to the root. Don't know if it was from biting the bars in its cage on the farm, or if one of the farmers had kind of tried to crudely remove that tooth and broke it. But that tooth was removed, and this is the one time that staff members really get to touch the bears and hug them, is when they're under anesthesia. So Alice got to give a little squeeze there.
We all did.
We all did. And John, the reporter from the UK, was prompted by Jill to smell the bear's paws because she says they smell like potato chips. And little Noah was not so sure about smelling bear paws. He didn't think that was a very good idea. While we were there, there was a crew from NPR filming, and they were filming to put some footage up on their website. We're also doing an interview for the radio show All Things Considered. The day after they left, CNN was supposed to be there, and their visas were denied. This was right before the Olympics in China, and the Chinese government was really clamping down on visas for the media. But it was great that we got some coverage on NPR.